Welcome back to My Best Friend's an Engineer. I'm Lexi.
And I'm Libby.
And today we have an amazing interview with Rachel, who talked about her experience being a fire protection engineer for Amazon to handling emotions as a woman in STEM. This was a great conversation and we touched on so many topics.
Literally so many topics. You need to keep listening. This might be one of my favorite episodes that we've ever done.
Yes, we need like a part 17.
I know, literally, we were like, okay, this is going to be part 1 of a billion because this was such a good interview.
But before we spoil it further, let's talk about our weeks. Libby, how have you been?
Yes, let me get into my tea of the week because I have literally so much to update you on. I made a list of my tea. I literally made
Are you
a
serious?
list.
Amazing.
I made a section on my notebook that says catch up with Lexi and made bullet points because I didn't want to forget anything. So much going on. So first of all, I was telling you over the weekend because we met up because we went to the Miami Northwestern football game, which plug in it, they won.
Go Miami.
Go football. We are such sporty girls. I literally knew nothing that was going on. I don't even know how people get the ball in football. I'm sounding so stupid right now, but I'm just gonna be authentic and true to myself because that's what we talked about in today's episode.
That is so funny. We were just making fun of, well, not making fun of. Let's not say we're making fun of, but we were very entertained by the roar of the
Oh my god.
Northwestern.
Oh my god. Okay, so you guys, Northwestern, they're the Cats. And in the stadium, every time the football team does something good, also if you're listening to and you're from Northwestern, no tea. I thought this was so humorous. The little overhead speaker goes rawr.
It
Like a
was
little
so funny
kitty
because every
cat.
time we would just look at each other. We're like, oh, they did good. Good job.
Apparently they did something good. But no, okay. I was telling you at the game that we did some interior design over the weekend. Actually, when I say we, I mean completely me. I didn't tell Brett of any of my decisions. I just went out and I did things to the house. Found a couch on Facebook Marketplace for free. It is this L-shaped black couch. It's literally like the material of jeans almost. I don't know, like it's so comfy. Like the previous owner, it's just like the perfect couch because it's lived in, it's like it's comfy. And before we had 2 couches, and Lexi knows what our living room looks like, but I don't know, like it was just feeling a little bit cramped in there. Like it was a little bit small for like the clunky couches that we had. And so Brett and I had always talked about how we wanted to get rid of those 2 couches and just have one L couch because when we first moved into our house, I was like so concerned, and we can honestly do a whole podcast episode about this, but I was so concerned about like furnishing my house for like other people to be in my house. Does that make sense? Like when we were picking out furniture and stuff, I was like, oh my god, like we need to make sure that we have 6 places to sit in case we have 6 people over at the same time. And I'm like, what? It's literally Brett, me, and Elsie. Literally 3.
That's so funny.
2 people and an animal that live in this home. So like I don't know why I was so concerned about providing seating for everyone, but yes, we got a Facebook Marketplace couch for free. Here is the kicker. I texted the woman who posted it at 8 p.m. on a Thursday, and she said, you have to pick it up before 10:30 p.m. And I'm like, what? Okay, SOS. Brett, I literally called him and I said 911 Facebook Marketplace emergency. And he called up his buddy and he said, yo, dude, Libby really wants this couch. Can I borrow your truck and your trailer? We get the truck and the trailer. We drive to this person's house. It is a no contact. Good. I don't want to see the person's face anyway, and it's free. So nobody's outside of this house. Brett and I are loading it up into this truck and trailer. We go home. I'm driving the whole way home at 10:30 p.m. with the brights on him on the highway because I wanted to make sure this couch didn't fly out. So yeah, couch saga. We got a new couch. But then I was like, we need new decor if we're gonna get a new couch. So I drove to IKEA the next day. Friday night. I spent my Friday night. It's 8 p.m. I'm pulling up to IKEA. They close at 9 p.m. Okay. I run in. Literally run through IKEA because you know how IKEA is. You can't just go to the one section that you want to go through. You have to literally run through the whole entire store and see all of the different departments to get where you want to go. I show up to the rug department. The exact one I wanted. Boom. There. I pick it up. Check out. I have regrets when I get to my car. I wanted this lamp. Why didn't I pick up the lamp in the first place? Go back into IKEA, run through the whole section of the store, find the lamp, pick up the lamp, get home. I'm telling you, this is a saga. That night, I forced Brett to rearrange the whole living room because I knew that I was gonna come down and see you on Saturday. So I was like, Brett, we're taking both couches out of here. We're vacuuming. We're wiping the walls down. We're cleaning the floor.
We're wiping the walls.
I was like,
Windex on the walls. All right, get your
literally,
rag.
I'm like, Mr. Clean, white eraser, and like all of the things. So anyway, yes, the living room saga is over. I feel so happy about it. I can't believe we found a couch on Facebook Marketplace, and yeah, I don't know. Like that's been my update for like house stuff. Work has been crazy. I don't know. We're just working through this thing that's like really confidential that I can't talk about, but I'm essentially doing some investigative work to find out how things happened on a project, and it's just been really stressful. So I was so excited to come tonight and like do this episode. I feel like I needed distressor. And last update to share is that my cystic acne has been so bad, literally so bad, ever since I got off the PILL. And my face, I've never had acne, okay? Never. Not even in high school. I have such deep, on my cheeks, it's deep. It's not even whiteheads, and it's itchy and it hurts. So I finally was a big girl and I called the dermatologist and I made an appointment for the end of November. But in the meantime, Brett had really bad acne when he was in high school. And so he was like, try out this Neutrogena stuff. This is what I used. So I'm trying it out, but now like my face is so like it's flaking off. Like I don't know if you've ever tried to use like acne medicine or anything like that, but like I'll put on makeup and it's literally like patches because my face is like shedding. I don't know how else to describe it, but I
Mm-hmm.
hope it helps. But
Oh,
oh, sorry. I just feel like I hijacked the mic. It's because I had so many things because I wrote it all
it's your
down.
tea of the week. You did not hijack it. You
I
have
had
the
so much
floor. You talk
tea.
as long as you want.
I
Yeah.
had so much tea to tell you.
Okay, I have a response list. Okay, first of all, the living room looks amazing for all the listeners. It looks like the couch looks amazing. I thought it
It's
was like
so
a
good.
love sack. I can't believe you got it for free. That's
I know.
awesome. I love the setup. Okay, that was my first one. Second one, the Mario Badescu drying cream is something that I've had luck with acne
Oh,
wise. So I'll send you a picture of what it looks like. But or maybe we'll tag it in the show notes.
literally.
But that is what has helped me a lot.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. Was there anything else I needed to address? I can't believe Miami won. No
I
offense to Miami football
know.
team,
I know. I
but
know. I can't believe they won. Speaking of them winning, we hung out on Saturday. What is your tea of the week?
my week has been good. So Friday night, this was such a wholesome weekend. I loved it. I had
Yeah.
like, I just, it was just so wholesome. So Friday, Joey and I made pasta, like
From scratch?
homemade pasta. Yeah, because
Oh,
his
what the
his
heck?
family got a pasta maker. So we're making this little pasta. We are making the little powder. So it was a powder that was compressed through, and we were like, it was so funny because we are both like looking over into like the little window, and we're like, I don't think it's working. But it
Wait,
was so,
pasta is
like they
powder?
well, that's why we were expecting a dough.
Uh
But the
huh.
way
Uh
that the
huh.
machine worked, it was like taking in this powder and compressing it through.
What
And
the
then we were
heck?
like looking in the window, and then all of a sudden you have pasta strands on the side coming out, and we're like, wow. So
Wow.
that was so fun. So we're gonna try and so yeah, we cooked, we did spaghetti squash. Yeah, we got all the veggies. It was very cute. And then Saturday we did our little photo shoot. So loved that. We were walking around the mall. We're like, where is the picture, people?
With my Aunt Annie's feeling like models.
Yes. So we did that. So that was splendid. And then we did the football game, which I feel like whenever I go to a football game, it reminds me of fall. It just makes me feel wholesome. You know, we went to a restaurant before. I just sat there and relaxed. I loved it. But, you know, I didn't stay long. I'm not going to say I stayed for the whole time. You stayed the whole time. You were
You know,
so good.
we tried to be football
Yes.
girlies.
And then after we got the best nachos, the best. I already talked about them, but I need to address that. And it was I 10 out of 10. But then
10
this
out of
week so
10.
far has been, yeah, this week has been good. I've been on site these past 2 days, which I kind of like out of the house. I think I like getting like the fall crisp air because usually I don't walk
Yeah.
outside anymore. I have been bad about walking, but so yeah. But other than that, we're just good. I don't think the week should be too tough. But yeah, 10 out of 10.
I think we can now probably get into our listeners' tea of the week. Lexi, what tea do you have to
Yes.
share?
Jane. said team building with my new department was a scavenger hunt at Dave and Buster's. It was horrendous. This one makes me laugh because because our Theta Tau formal one year was at Dave and Buster's. Do you
Oh my
remember
god,
that?
it was a disaster. I was just a menace running around David Buster's. I wasn't even play the game, so I can't even imagine what team bonding looked like.
Yeah, that is so funny. Well, at least that I'm
At
happy
least
your
you played
team
some
is
games.
trying to bond. Yeah, it's like yay.
That's so
All
funny.
right, Libby, what do you got? What do you have?
All right, Sam sent in that she got a B plus on her fluids exam. Honestly, get it? That is amazing. I personally loved
Woohoo!
fluids, so I can relate. I loved studying fluids.
I really didn't like. I'm not gonna say that. I'm not gonna say
You
that
didn't
because
like
what if
it?
they listen? Well, I was gonna say about Professor Wise. She's not gonna listen to this.
She's not gonna listen to
No
a
way. No
podcast.
way.
No
I did
way.
not have a very good experience. I just some professors don't really mesh with their teaching style, and that was one of the classes where I did not mesh. I what's the opposite of mesh? I like
Um,
hit a wall.
Compress.
Hit a wall.
Uh,
Yeah.
Demagnetize. I don't know.
Yeah. So, but congratulations, Sam. Now, without further ado, let's get into Rachel and all things fire protection engineering. Today, we are speaking with Rachel. Rachel, can you give our listeners a little introduction and kind of a little background information?
Yeah, sure. Well, hi everyone. My name is Rachel Lilienfeld. I'm a fire protection engineer at Amazon Web Services, so at Amazon, and I joined the tech industry 6 months ago, but I've been in industry for, I guess it's a little over 6 years now. So I graduated with my undergrad from the University of Maryland in 2016, and my bachelor's was a degree in fire protection engineering, which is most people haven't heard of that type of degree before. I actually didn't before I went to University of Maryland. I was originally studying mechanical engineering, and I also have a master's in interdisciplinary engineering and engineering management through Purdue. And I got that degree while I was working at my previous employer. And yeah, so I'm just really excited to be here. And thanks for having me, guys.
So many things to unpack. Your resume is literally so impressive. I want to start with your work experience. So, is Amazon Web Services, is that like the typical Amazon that we think of, like that we can order and do Prime from? And what does it mean to be a fire protection engineer for them?
Oh, yeah. So great question. So Amazon Web Services is like their cloud computing of Amazon. So I work with our facility center side. So that's like Amazon Prime and all of that with their fire protection engineers and their insurance team and stuff like that. But Amazon Web Services is specifically more like the tech side. So if you think of data centers, even battery storage, anything like that, that's kind of like more on my side. So I get to learn about all the cool stuff that's happening at Amazon. My email is amazon.com, so it's one company, but I morely focus on the data center side.
You mentioned that you didn't know what fire protection engineering was, as a major. I personally have never heard of that major, so I would love to learn more about what that entails and what made you choose, this major versus, like you mentioned, mechanical engineering you were thinking about.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I think I get this question all the time, and every single time I love to answer it. So I was really fortunate. Both my parents are engineers, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was applying to schools. I knew, I wanted to help people. I loved working on teams, and my parents were like, "Hey, why don't you look into engineering? You happen to be stronger at math and science than English and history." So I was applying to schools. Mechanical is very broad, and I originally actually even wanted to do biomedical because I just love the idea of helping people. But University of Maryland didn't have biomedical; they only had bioengineering. So I was mechanical, and I would think I was a mechanical engineer studying for a year and a half. And I don't really know how to describe it, but I really couldn't find my place. University of Maryland was really large. The physics and all the basic classes just didn't really come that naturally to me. I had to work really hard, like most engineers, I would think so. But and I had a friend on my floor who, I guess it was my sophomore year at the time, and he was studying fire protection engineering. And I was like, oh, what is that? I've never even heard of it before. And we just had a few conversations on how he kind of fell into fire protection. And basically, it came down to, your job as a fire protection engineer, I found out, is to protect people. And I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. I don't really want to work on cars and pumps. And, okay, I want to help people. So this sounds great. Honestly, a big perk was at the time I didn't have to take physics 3 if I was a fire protection engineer versus mechanical. So that sounds really, really appealing. But I was worried it was going to be too specialized. And, I called my parents and I was like, there's this really niche opportunity University of Maryland has. They're the only undergraduate accredited fire protection engineering program in the US. There's other schools that have great master's programs, and there's other schools that have fire science degrees, but like actually pure fire protection engineering. So my parents were like, well, can you get a job? What does that look like? I'm like, great question. So I went and talked to one of the academic advisors, and I was like, hey, can you show me the different options as a fire protection engineer if I were to graduate with that degree? And she basically was like, it's 100% job placement. There's never enough fire protection engineers. You're a specialized engineer, so a lot of times you make more than, let's say, a mechanical engineer. And here's the 4-year plan. And I compared the two 4-year plans between mechanical and fire protection. And I was like, okay, I get to take fire and life safety. I get to take fire dynamics. So all of these classes that just sounded so much more interesting to me than some of the other coursework that I was, geared up to take. And I still had the opportunity to study abroad, which was super important to me, even though it was such a niche degree. I was like, okay, so this doesn't really hold me back. And I switched, and it has been honestly the best opportunity that I just happened to fall into. I've gotten a lot of just really cool career options kind of come my way, just being in a specialized and small industry. So um, I think, I wish more people knew about the industry, because it's just been so awesome to be in a field that is not really known. But if you think about it, we're always going to have fires, and you're always going to need fire protection engineers. So it's a job that, I don't see it ever going away. So
You mentioned that University of Maryland was really big, and at first it was kind of hard to find your place. A lot of the audience that we have listening can probably relate to that, as they are college aged. So if there's somebody who's listening who is majoring in engineering or some other STEM degree, and they're also kind of feeling that way, what would your recommendation or advice be to that person to kind of find their people or find their place within college?
awesome question. I knew you guys would send some good ones my way. So Um, something that I really recommend, and I'll hopefully be able to get a chance to get into, my past over 6 years in my career. But I've worked a lot with universities and developing like our branding on campus and our internship programs and things like that. My previous employer, and something that I always tell the students is. And you'll hear this in industry. I think it's one of the most important things in industry as well. You really just want to build that network. And ways that you can do that is, and I know you guys have really been involved in Theta Tall, which was one of the organizations that I worked with when I was helping, my last employer really brand on campus. So I love that. But when I first started at University of Maryland, I was out of state. I didn't know anyone on campus, and I kind of felt like I had to like go to all these different types of organizations. I wanted to do everything, and I learned that really being involved in a few organizations, once you kind of experience, if you're really like, okay, where can I really dive in and be involved, not just like show up to the meetings and leave. Like, where could you maybe see yourself being on a board position so you really can develop those relationships? And a lot of organizations have these mentoring programs. I'm sure you guys in your organizations on campus had that. And I just think mentoring and building your network, and I've heard it throughout a lot of the different podcasts that you guys have done, just that mentoring and that support system. And I think it is so imperative in the workplace, but also in your undergraduate or even graduate, like any academia. So yeah, I just think like being involved, but not outstretching too thin. So just finding those opportunities that you really do connect with and you can actually like invest time in, I think is great. I think something that just keeps coming up in my career that I never really could articulate earlier is like what actually energizes me. So obviously every job you have tasks that maybe are a bit mundane, but I really tried to think, and actually one of my mentors in my career a few years ago told me this, like kind of start pinpointing, I'm seeing you really light up when you talk about this task or this type of relationship that you have in the workplace. And when I think back to the organizations that I really dove into, those were the ones that like I just felt energized with when I would leave those meetings. And I don't know, so that's probably the one piece of advice. I'm sure a lot of people have heard that before, but I think it's good to reiterate. So
Theta Talk always finds a way into these
yeah.
episodes, one way or another. But I really liked your point about, finding an organization that you can really get involved in. And it's kind of, what you put into it is what you get out. So I really like that point. But you mentioned something earlier regarding your education that interests me. So it was the interdisciplinary engineering masters, I believe, or at Purdue. Can you talk a little bit more about that degree and what that entails and what made you interested in it?
Oh, yes. So I did my undergrad, started working because I was like, am I gonna like fire protection engineering and industry as much as I liked it in academia? And also just being out of state, and I was like, okay, I want to start working and see. I always thought I wanted a master's. I didn't want to need it. So engineering is great because a lot of disciplines you don't need a master's. It can only help you, though. I am fully in support, obviously, of continuing your education if you have the opportunity. So I picked an employer that I knew also supported continuing education. So that was really great. They were super flexible. They provided monetary support, which was awesome because that's something that I needed. And how I picked my degree was I realized that I was gravitating more towards the people side. Like I liked the technical stuff and I liked what opportunities I had through the technical fire protection realm. But what really was energizing me was building relationships and working with people. And fire protection engineering is an interdisciplinary degree. So I like on any day, I am working with countless different engineering disciplines, the electrical engineers for fire alarm, the mechanical engineers for, sprinklers, fire suppression, fire pumps, different things like that. Our security team just for different, I guess, passive fire protection, if there's fire barriers or just whatever campus we're working on, and also our architects from our life safety and egress side. So I noticed that I really liked the more strategy, big picture, and a lot of fire protection engineers are actually mechanical engineers that just happen to fall in an industry. There's that gap where there isn't enough fire protection engineers, so they make mechanical engineers do fire suppression and things like that. So I was like, well, I definitely want a more general degree. I don't want a fire protection master's because I already had that specialty. And I also, for one thing or another, my dad's an engineer but has an MBA. And I was like, I think in industry, it's really great to kind of broaden your horizon. And for one way or another, my company would not support an MBA. And I was like, why don't I just try a more technical degree? So the interdisciplinary engineering degree so it was basically in a concentration with engineering management at Purdue was one of the programs that I found that my company supported. And how I described it, it's like 2/3 systems engineering, 1/3 MBA. So when I graduated, I have a master's of science in engineering, and I also have a graduate certificate in systems and a graduate certificate in business management. So I took,
That's so
4 business
cool.
MBA classes. Yeah, it was awesome. And being in classes with, um, MBA students was just really helped with that management piece. I did have to take like, advanced accounting, and I was like, will I ever need this? But it just really helped give me that, like, I think, full picture. And a lot of people ask, like, oh, are you going into systems engineering now that you got your master's in it? And I was like, I could, and maybe at some point, but I'm still really liking fire protection. And especially, I happened to graduate with my master's this past May after over 4 years, and I switched jobs for the first time in March. So there was a lot happening within, 2022 for me. But yeah, that's a bit about the degree. And I guess I want to touch on how I picked that master's. I had like an Excel, and I was like, what are things that are important to me in my master's? I'm choosing to do this. I'm choosing to give up my free time, pay some of my money, also have my employer pay. So I, looked at things like, obviously I wanted a school that was, well ranked. It didn't have to be number one, but I wanted them to be respected in the industry. I wanted to have flexibility to take classes that I felt were relevant. It needed to be virtual. So pre-COVID, had to be a virtual program because I was working full time. So, I looked at different cost structures, and technical versus non-technical. Like there was other things I considered. Did I want a mechanical engineering master's? Did I want a more engineering leadership master's? So I kind of found one that was perfect in the middle for me, and really just allowed me to get a better opportunity to be a better fire protection engineer, or also go into more maybe engineering management, or just open up that doors that I wasn't going to be pigeonholed into fire protection if at some point I ever wanted to change.
Congratulations with obtaining your master's. That's really cool to hear the process that you went through to pick a school to get your degree in. I'm not saying by any means that a master's is on the horizon very close for me, but it's definitely something that I've
Mm-hmm.
considered. So it's kind of cool to hear that process from your point of view and like what you valued when you were going through that. But in addition to getting your master's, you also are a professional engineer, and I followed your story on TikTok when you were sharing, getting ready to take the PE. And then when you found out that you passed, I'm pretty sure I was crying along with you while I was watching that video. That is an incredible accomplishment. What were some of the biggest challenges, maybe mentally, that you went through while you were going through trying to get your PE?
Oh, yeah. So that's, I think, how we started, we're introduced to each other. I honestly took a video. I'm not that into social media, I would say. I don't want to say I'm not that creative, but I'm really not. I really just love connecting with people. And I kind of took that video for myself, and then just, I don't know, on a whim happened to post it. And I guess people like seeing someone emotional on social media. And I realized that I was told a lot throughout my career that being a female in STEM, you have to hide your emotion. And we can hopefully get into this later about like actually how I think like having that emotion, and of course not, crying in every meeting, but having the emotion, showing your authentic side has really helped me really excel in my career. But going back to the PE and kind of what I was going through and the challenges, because I feel like I kind of skip over your question sometimes, like, oh, let me go back and actually answer what you guys asked. So I was going through a lot. So I took the PE October 2020. It is a fire protection engineer PE. It's only offered one day a year, and that is because there are not a lot of fire protection engineers. So I was told they just don't have a lot of questions, so they can only offer it one day a year. So already a lot of pressure. October 2020, I happened to be on a 4-month business trip to Knoxville, Tennessee at the time. I left early May 2020. I had to go to one of our mission critical sites. So COVID was very, very fresh, as everyone's very well aware of the timeline. The PE timeline is you typically apply around March. So I applied, and then a few months later, I was, in an Airbnb for 4 months. So I was all throughout the summer working really hard because we were understaffed, and studying for the PE, but there was a few complications with my PE experience. One of them being it was the first time the fire protection PE was being given computer based. So typically, I don't know if you guys, are totally in tune to the timeline of like some of the PEs have transferred over to computer based, and others are still written. But fire protection for the first time was going to be computer based in October 2020. So one day a year, first time being computer based. So of course there's not that many resources, as all the years before. You could take practice exams and things like that. Um, so I got back. So that was one challenge, right? Just studying while working really, really hard in COVID. But I was on site every day for those 4 months. That's why I had to be on a 4-month business trip. So all of those things added a little bit of heightened, I would say, stress to the situation. And then just myself putting pressure. Everyone knew I was taking it. I purposely did not take a master's class that semester because I was taking the PE. So I was like, oh my God, what are people going to think if I don't pass? Which, granted, the amount of people that have told me, they didn't pass the first time and whatnot, of course, helped, but still didn't really calm my nerves and my perfectionist side. So I would say like the biggest challenges were just the pressure I was putting on myself and the just kind of experience that I personally went through just with the business trip and the environment of the PE that I was taking. Um, I don't know. I think I'm a huge advocate for the PE. It's something, even if you don't necessarily need it in your current career, you never know, especially for the physical engineering, mechanical, civil, stuff like that. Even if you are, let's say, consulting and you don't need your PE, I still think you never really know where your career is going to go. So it's easier to take the exam when everything is fresh, in my opinion. So yeah, those were some challenges. I mean, also just little things like having to wear a mask at the testing center. So trying to calm myself down while sitting there for 8 hours. And I do think the biggest things that helped me were just practicing in the environment that I was going to be taking it. So you're not allowed to have water or food unless for your allotted break. So I would try to take practice exams in the same environment and with a mask on, which was not enjoyable. So yeah, I mean, all of those things. I guess that's just like one quick tip, but I definitely recommend if you are in an industry, especially to consider taking the PE. There's so many resources out there, but yeah, you can get through it because I think after going through what I went through, especially moving and all of that while I was on a business trip, it's possible to make it happen. So.
Totally agree with like taking it even if you don't need it. I'm mechanical and I took the mechanical FE and I'm going to
Mhm.
probably take the PE, but I don't like necessarily need it for my job, but like I'd rather have it now than be like an old fart and be a 50-year-old woman. Not
Yeah.
that 50-year-old women are like old, but and like not have the knowledge fresh to be able to do that intense exam.
Yeah, and real quick, something that I would say, because when I was on campus, I would get asked this question a lot: Should I take the FE? Should I take the PE? And I would recommend for those students, and I apologize if this already came up on your guys' podcast already, but look at jobs that, let's say you're in a job and you're really happy, but you're like, okay, in the future, what type of job would I want? And for me, when I was looking at jobs, it typically, sometimes would say PE highly recommended, or it would never typically say PE mandated. But if it's like PE recommended or PE preferred, that's always a really good indicator of I should really be considering this. And again, not all engineering does need the PE, but it's something that no one, if you have two identical resumes next to one another, and even if your job doesn't need the PE, you're going to pick the person that has the PE just because you're like, oh,
Yes.
they have this extra credibility. So just my 2 cents, it will never hurt you. Besides, it just takes away a little bit of your free time. But if you have the capacity to do it, I highly recommend it. So.
Definitely. Well, that is an amazing accomplishment. Congratulations.
Thanks.
I did want to touch on, you made a comment earlier about being emotional in the workforce as a woman. I'd love to dive deeper into that and get your thoughts.
Oh yeah, there's so many stories I could talk about this. But my main thoughts, and honestly, why I've been posting a few TikToks, because I'm trying to help normalize emotion in STEM. I think that being authentic and is so important, and that makes you happier in your job, and that's also makes it way easier for you to build connections. And if you have connections and you have that trust with your colleagues, whether it's your direct report, your supervisor, your peers, and I think early in my career, I thought I had to be this, especially working in the defense industry, because my 6 years prior to tech was defense, pretty heavy. So, I was around this very typical environment if you think of defense and government contracting. And I thought, I could never show emotion. I had to be very, to the point, no small talk, and really just execute. And honestly, I became an extremely good executor in that role, and it's something that I even honestly today at work I was. For the first time in a few months, started to feel those emotions coming up, and I was on a call with one other person, and um, I even felt myself like pushing down those emotions and not wanting to articulate like my frustration that I was so good at executing my last job, and right now I'm feeling the churn and just my frustration. And I had to remind myself it's okay to be transparent about where my frustrations are, as long as you could still articulate where you're at. And it actually, I think, really helps build the connection. So where I was told earlier in my career, and my parents are incredible. I am so lucky that I have them, but they grew up in a time where you can have emotion in the workplace, especially as a female. So I had to talk go through a really long conversation with them one time about, I appreciate you guys are saying, you want me to look the best in the workplace, but having emotion can actually be a good thing as long as you're not letting it get the best of you. And maybe that's not happening every time, but if something is emotion, or like coming up as emotion, it kind of helps show your passion, which I think has been really, really beneficial in my career, and just kind of um, excelling in ways that I didn't think it would help. So I think there's always a balance, but kind of like why I started posting TikToks, like I said, is just to help normalize that conversation that um, getting rid of emotion completely, actually, in my opinion, isn't the best option. It's having that balance, and being able to show that passion can really help just build those relationships. I feel like I'm going to be a broken record a bit, but yeah, that's just kind of my 2 cents on emotion. And yeah, I don't know if you have any other follow up questions to that, but that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Well, I'm glad we touched on that because I feel, I personally am dealing with that right now. I'm, in the same mindset. I cannot show any emotion. I need to be professional, no
Hmm.
small talk. And I think we touched on this a little bit in last week's episode.
Hmm.
So it's kind of funny how this is full circle moment.
Yeah.
What was it like being a female in the defense industry? I want to learn a little bit more about your career prior to being an Amazon Web Services fire protection engineer, and
Mhm.
what your career looked like before you entered the tech space.
Oh yeah. So I did not think I was going to go into construction. So I guess as a fire protection engineer, there's a lot of different opportunities. You could go into arson investigation, which is actually what I originally thought I wanted to do, until I was sitting in a class and they put up a crime scene, and I was like, nope, not going to be for me. Um, I was like, oh, I want to protect people from fires. And so, being in design and construction, so that you can build facilities that are safe for the occupants during operations. I was like, that sounds really cool, but I never really thought about being on a construction site. Also in fire protection, you can do research, and just I guess a whole other, if we want to get into that later, just different options, in insurance or whatnot, consulting. But consulting can mean a lot of things. So I had an internship in project management, and then had an internship for a government contractor. So going into my senior year, and it was designed to support construction. So being on a construction site, and Libby, you worked in the power generation world, so you I think understand a bit of that as well. The
Oh yeah.
atmosphere that we're in. Um, but it's I don't want to say it's rougher, but even still now, and I also look a little young, but someone curses in front of me and they immediately apologize, and I'm like, you don't have to apologize to me. Like, there are other people in the room, and it's just an interesting environment. And I guess I never thought I would be in it. But basically, so for 6 years, I worked for a contractor, and I worked on mega projects. So anywhere from multi-million to multi-billion dollar complexes, mainly for the government. So my main clients were the Department of Energy and the Department of Defense. I worked on a uranium processing facility. I worked on a chemical weapons demilitarization facility. So, really, really just very unique projects, a lot of requirements, a lot of veterans, which you learn so much from people who were in the service. But again, very, very not, I guess, high energy like I am. So I would kind of match a lot of the people in the room because I never wanted to come off too strong. And that was always something that I tried to navigate, especially early in my career. Like, again, coming off in that brand that you guys were talking about, the personal brand, that I wanted to kind of match everyone who I was around. And that even came down to in the beginning, I was wearing clothes too big because I wanted to not, I guess, not give anyone the wrong idea, but just I wanted to really kind of fit in. And being in the defense and mission critical side, it was exactly what I wanted. I wanted to, help society, and doing that as a fire protection engineer, where my job is to protect people and, of course, protect the assets, protect the environment, protect business continuity. But my main job every day was like, how, if I make this decision, will someone get hurt or will someone die? And I still live by that decision every day. And I would hope other fire protection engineers do as well. But it also puts a lot of pressure. So my first few years in the career, I constantly was trying to prove myself and prove my credibility. And no one was really making me do that. I had amazing mentors that I, ended up finding throughout, especially early in my career. I felt so fortunate. But I had this, again, perfectionism and, just the imposter syndrome. You guys have had an episode on it that I loved. I didn't even know what imposter syndrome was until I listened to a book. I kept saying I never had the technical confidence. I just need to build my technical confidence. So, kind of long story in my career, right? Defense, very, I was in the office every single day around, this very typical type of government employees, and just trying to find my place and find where I added value, honestly, because it took a while to not want to burn myself out. So I loved working on mega projects. I mean, the stuff that we built was first of a kind, and it was just incredible to work with the technology that has never been done before, and be on a fire protection team is smaller compared to your other mechanical teams. So being able to work with project managers and really articulate to them, hey, if you make this decision, this is the risk you're willing to take on. And I mean, my job is really communicating and understanding the risk and making sure all the right players understand what that risk is, and even if it has a cost and schedule impact, what that looks like. And a lot of project managers and project directors don't want to hear that, but I feel really fortunate in my career that I was at a company that valued safety, and that was the number one thing, and that was important. Picking a company that had similar values. So yeah, for 6 years it was worked, whether it was nuclear power, environmental management. We worked on a nuclear waste treatment facility that's going to be the largest in the world when it is built. So just the scale of the projects was just honestly phenomenal to see. So that was kind of my first 6 years, and yeah, it was really cool to be on construction sites and navigating what being a early career female on a construction site, especially being at such a niche industry. Um, yeah, so.
I can totally relate to what you're saying about being in such a niche industry with like working with construction
Mhm,
type people. I mean, I had an experience where I walked into the trailer and one of the guys
mhm,
in there was like, "Oh, put your head or put your earmuffs on, you're
mhm,
about to be around all these grumpy men." And I kind of looked at him and I was like, "Are you talking to me?" And he's like, "Yeah, put your earmuffs on. We're about to swear." And
mhm.
I just kind of looked around and I walked out of the trailer and I was like, what just happened? Like, it was just so odd. Just like what you're saying of being like a woman earlier in her career around these like people who are a little bit more rough around the edges.
Mhm.
I loved hearing about those topics of those projects, first of all. That is just, I'm intimidated already. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh, thanks. Um, yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy how you end up where you end up and you just fall into it. But I mean, Libby, now I want to ask you some questions. I'm like, how did you handle that? But I'm sure that can go for another time. But yeah, it's.
No, I mean, I just, whether or not this is good or bad, I always just typically lean on the side of like humor. Like, it was just easiest for me to always just be like, oh,
Mhm,
ha ha ha, like, you silly guy, like, you don't have to do it with me. But then, like, deep down, I'm like, what the heck just happened?
mhm. Yeah, that's great. See, I'm not funny, so I am always just like, oh, stand here be awkward and then go tell all of my friends about it later because I don't know what else to do. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's I think maybe I don't know if this had to do with like the imposter syndrome tendencies that I had, but especially earlier in my career and even just happened recently on a construction site. I don't know. I think um I I get the secondhand awkwardness because I'm like, I feel the people around me having to change because I'm there. And I know you really just have to own that. And I'm sure there's a lot of great content out there on how I can kind of get over that. But yeah, that's great that you found what works for you, Libby. I think I'm personally still figuring out because I kind of just stand there awkwardly and I'm like, okay, so let's change the subject. And then I go
Yeah, what do we do
decompress
now?
like in my car after. Yeah, which maybe isn't the best. I know a lot of people are like, oh, like you should say something so the behavior doesn't continue and stuff. But for me, I think a lot of times I'm just so caught off guard that it still happens.
Totally.
I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna pretend that didn't happen for now and go deal with it on my own. And then if I feel like I need to revisit it or it's a reoccurring problem, I will. But in the moment, I don't know. But that's probably, I don't know. At least that's what has gotten me to where I am right now. I'm not saying that maybe I can't change that in the future, but
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the pod. I'm so glad that we were able to talk about, being a woman in the defense field, to what a fire protection engineer is, to, handling your emotions as a woman in STEM. But before we ask our final
yeah.
question, did you have anything you wanted to touch on that we didn't really address in the episode?
Ooh, I think I mean you guys asked some awesome questions. So I guess the only thing I would say is there's so many different career paths out there, and if anyone is interested in learning more about fire protection, I'm happy to answer more questions because I feel like I didn't get a chance to dive too much on like what a day to day looks like. But really the big thing, and it comes up a lot through your guys' podcast that I've heard is. I want to reiterate building that network. And if you aren't sure what you want to do, just reach out to someone and ask to have like a 30-minute to a half hour call about what their day to day looks like. Because even as a fire protection engineer, there are so many opportunities I could have. And when I worked for 6 years at my last employer, I had many different fire protection roles on, as I mentioned, a lot of different types of projects. And that was just in one small industry. Well, I wouldn't say defense is small, but in one industry. So yeah, there's so much you can do. Even as a specialized engineer, there's so many options. So just keep doing stuff that you guys are doing, and I think it's great also what you guys are doing and helping really people transition throughout their careers. It's just awesome, and I love to see it. So
We could probably do a whole another episode all about like your day to day because I feel like you said there were so many other things that we probably could have talked about.
yeah.
But the way that we like to close out every episode of My Best Friend's an Engineer is to ask our guests these one question, and it is, knowing what you know now, what is the advice that you could give your younger self?
Yes, I do know you guys do this, and there's so many things. Um, I God, I really, really couldn't pick one thing to tell you guys, but if I have to pick one, um, that I would tell myself, you don't need to know the answer to everything and you're not expected to know the answer to everything. And also it's better if you're transparent when you're like, I don't know the answer, but I will get back to you and you follow up. I think the big thing is finding where you add value, and where your strengths are and really kind of pulling on that and still learning and always finding what energizes you like I mentioned earlier. But yeah, that it's okay that you don't know the answer to everything, and it doesn't mean that you're not a credible engineer, and it doesn't mean that you're not good at your job. But if you're actually your authentic self and honest about, hey, I'm just going to follow up with you tomorrow. I know, Libby, you've said before, put a deadline on it and be like, hey, I will get back to you at this time. That's probably the biggest thing. So just being okay and comfortable, and get comfortable with not having the answers to everything. But if you're reliable and that's really, you show up, that's the best thing I think that you can do. And being a perfectionist will only burn you out. So that's probably, I probably threw more than one thing in there, but
That is awesome advice, especially for someone who is transitioning into the workforce. Awesome. Well, if our listeners want to talk to you and learn more about fire protection engineering, or just see what your day to day looks like, where can they find you?
I actually, again, I'm not like, I had to look up what my social media stuff was because I knew you guys asked this question. So, I guess Instagram and TikTok, I would probably say. it's the same for both. It's Rach, RACH underscore LILIE. So Rach Lily. That's probably where, and I've had people on my TikTok comment and ask to talk about, different things. And I don't know, it, I just, if there's anything I can ever do to even help one person, I think it's just, I would do anything to make that happen. So totally open if anyone wants any advice. I've been mentors to a lot of different early career people, and I love it so much. So sometimes better than the day job, even though I do love my day job too. But
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on today's episode. This was probably one of the most energizing conversations I feel like we've had. This was awesome. Definitely need to have you back for a part 2. And yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, it was so great to meet you guys. Thanks again.
Well, that was amazing. Like we have touched on in the intro, touched on during the episode, we would love to have Rachel back and talk about more aspects of her experience in general. So if you have any questions, be sure to, leave a comment on the reels we post, or maybe, stay tuned on our stories for our little question boxes.
Yes, and if you guys like this episode, be sure to text it to a friend, share it with them. There are so many nuggets of information in this episode. I cannot believe how much advice Rachel gave that was actionable and like actually things that you can apply to your own schooling, career, work, etc. If you like this episode, be sure to leave a 5-star rating and review. Leave a written review if you are listening on Apple Podcasts. Be sure to take a screenshot and send it into the link in our bio for a chance to win a $100 Visa gift card as well. Anybody who screenshots their review and submits it will be entered to that giveaway.
We have an event coming up October 18th. It is our compensation negotiation workshop, which can also provide some actionable advice for you guys. So make sure you go check out that link in our bio as well. I was trying to think of I always try to think of something funny as I go and say, what can they talk to you about, Libby? But I don't know. Where can they find you, Libby? Let's be boring. Where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Libby Beyond the Label. And Lexi, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Engineer Lexi.
And we'll be sure to put Rachel's information in the show notes as well if you want to reach out to her to learn more about being a fire protection engineer.
Yes. All right. I'm Lexi.
And I'm Libby.
And thanks for listening
to my best
friends, an engineer.